Good morning, everybody, and you find me inside today. There is no cycling home from work today. It's pissing it down. Yeah, it's absolutely pissing it down outside today. It's November the 10th, 2023, and it's got cold here in Japan. Obviously not as cold as it is in the UK at the moment, but it's freezing here. And today, because it's Friday, for some reason, the people I work for have given everybody a day off. So I don't have to go in today. I don't have to do any cycling home today. I'm just at home. I'm doing my own work for my own business. I'm not working for anybody else today apart from myself. I've got everything done that I needed to do, and it's just coming up to 11:30. So here we are with the podcast in a warm room. I don't have to deal with anybody getting in my way, cycling home. I don't have to deal with people taking photographs at that level crossing. I don't have to stop for anybody. It's just me. Although there is an house getting built within earshot. So if you're hearing people banging a hammer or on a nail gun, that's what that is. So, yeah, did you hear that? So episode 122. 122. And what I want to talk to you today is about the way I travel. And the only reason I want to talk about the way I travel this episode is I've booked an holiday for in between Christmas and New Year. Not in between. I'm going away just after Christmas and we're coming back in New Year. My wife has put the travel arrangements in my capable hands, and I'll use that adjective with air quotes, because she's now thinks that the kids are old enough to travel like I travel. Now, in the ways that me and my wife travel or travelled in the past are completely from opposite ends of the spectrum. Now, just a bit of history. Before I met my wife, she was a tour guide, travel agent / tour guide. So she would take out the country's retired, I wouldn't say elites, but there was certainly upper middle class. So they had the money. They made the money in the 80s and 90s, and then they retired, obviously early 2000s, and then they would go online, find these fancy tours in Europe, South America, America. They would book them. Once these tours were filled up, my wife would then do all the paperwork for it, and off they'd go, off into the night on a flight to Europe. And then once they landed, it were 5-star all the way. Hotels, restaurants, tours around the various cities that they were doing in this certain country. And, Austria. I've been to Austria before, obviously on a shoestring, but she would show me what they were going to be getting up to in these countries and what they were going to go and do. And it would amaze me that people, one, would have this much money to spend in what is considered a long holiday, a long vacation of 10 days in a country like Austria. I mean, some of the prices that were getting flung about, I travelled for 1 year around the entire planet using that much money. And this were just going to be for one person for 10 days in Austria. There were operas, there were live music events, there were these restaurants, all sorts of stuff. And it amazed me. So this is what my wife had become used to in her work. And then in walks me, a person who has travelled extensively on the fucking cheap. And now whatever you have as your low bar of cheap, just lower that a little bit more, and that's where I'm coming from. That's the spectrum I'm coming from. Now, as a kid, I was adopted into a family who were the most unadventurous people I still know to this day. They needed everything to be familiar. And that was it wasn't a good recipe for a kid who wanted adventure, who wanted the exact opposite. Now, we would go to Pontins at Springbank. Now, Pontins is a holiday camp where you go in on a Saturday afternoon, you're given a 2-bedroom chalet. There's a double bed in the living room, there's a telly in the living room, and then there's a room off to the left, which were a couple of bunk beds, a room off to the right, which is a bathroom. So you went in there on your Saturday afternoon, and you emerged from there on a Saturday morning when cleaners were coming in to clean up. During that week, you had 3 square meals a day: breakfast, dinner, and tea, all served in a 2-hour window. During the day, you had competitions, pool competitions, snooker competitions, all sorts of activities were provided for you. There was a table tennis room, obviously a snooker room, a swimming pool. There were TV lounges, a cinema, stuff that you could do the whole time you were on this. No minute of the day was left. You were never going to be bored. You weren't really encouraged to go outside, apart from just being on this holiday camp. Now, we went to holiday camps in Morecambe, Blackpool. We went to one down south. We did that once, but my dad, Pakefield it was called, and my dad thought, I'm not doing that again. It's too much of a drive. So we just basically stayed at the ones in Morecambe and Blackpool. And it were fucking shite for me. My mum and dad loved it because you had the entertainment at night. So you'd finish your tea around 6 o'clock. You'd go back to chalet. My mum would have a few liveners. There'd be makeup and perfume put on, and then off you'd go to live entertainment at night from 7 till 11 and watch all manner of terrible fucking turns and concerts that were on. Comedians and just bad cover bands. And then everybody would roll off back to the chalets at 11 o'clock, and you'd do it again the next day. And I found it quite shite. Now, Pontins branched off into Spain, and it were called Pontinental. Now, I saw, when I were about 12 or 13, I saw the leaflets of this getting advertised in Blackpool, and ran to my mum and dad saying, look at this, we can go to this one next year. And they looked at it, and they took it on board for a couple of weeks and then decided against it. So that was our main holiday of the year, were Pontins during Springbank. We never went in summer because it was more expensive. But Springbank. And I was thinking, oh, God. When my friends were flying off to Spain, my friends would fly off to Spain for a week or two and then come back and be suntanned, and they'd tell me about the week that they spent around the swimming pool, and the mum and dads had driven off into the mountains of Spain, and they'd stopped off in this restaurant and eaten this Spanish food. I was like, God, I want some of that. Now, my parents did book a holiday to Spain twice and cancelled it. And there is a quote that my mother said to me that still sticks with me today. We were coming home on bus from the middle of Bradford, and my mum said to me, after cancelling the second holiday, we were on this bus, and she'd told me how we were going to go to this medieval night in Spain where these fellas on horses and they're doing jousting, and you sat there like a king watching these jousting things, eating chicken legs. And I was looking forward to it. And we were going home on bus, and my mum said, we've cancelled that holiday to Spain. We're not going. I said, well, what about this medieval night? And she said to me, well, when you book these holidays, what are you left with at the end of the day? All you're left with is these memories. And what are they worth? And that has stuck with me. I'm 52 now, so we're talking over 40 years ago she said that, and I still remember that to this day. Because I think it was one of those points in my life where I decided, right, I'm going to fucking travel. Going up Manchester Road on that bus in rain, looking out of that condensation-soaked window, I thought that was where I think I started. I've got to get out of here. I've got to fuck off from here pretty damn quick. So what they did was they bought a caravan up in Dales, and it were a touring caravan. Now, when people buy touring caravans, they put a tow ball on the back of the car and they tow the caravan all around the country, and then you stop for weekends in different places around the UK, which for the first 6 or 7 months, that's what they did do. And my dad then didn't like pulling caravan around on back at car. So that was stopped. And they found this campsite up in Yorkshire Dales near Grassington. And they took this static caravan, which were built for towing around the country on the back of your car, and they left it in a field for years. In this field, on a campsite called Long Ashes. A touring caravan that didn't tow. And every weekend between the months of March and October, every weekend, without fail, we would go up to this caravan. Friday night until Sunday afternoon. Now, you think March in the Yorkshire Dales, it's raining, sometimes snowing. The weather's terrible in England. There were no kids up there. There were nothing to do. So I was just left to my own devices. We were up there every weekend. Easter, we were there for 2 weeks. 6 weeks in the 6 weeks holidays, we were there. My dad used to take his British Telecom van up there and go to work from there, leaving me and my mum by ourselves with naught to do. So it were a waste of a childhood. Complete waste of a childhood. So, as soon as I could go travelling by myself, off I went. And I think that is what fueled my desire, my love, the passion that I have for travelling now has come from those wasted years sat in a caravan when it's pissing it down outside with nothing to do, no telly, no kids to play with. That passion were put inside, that fire were put inside of me to just not do this anymore. So, I've been given the keys to the castle for our December-January holiday. And I've booked this holiday around one country. We've got 8 days. We've got 8 days of travelling. And we are going to be going to 4 different places during these 8 days. And I'm quite looking forward to it. I'm not going to tell you where I'm going because I'm going to podcast from this country when we're there, and I'm going to do a travel vlog while we're in country. You'll soon find out. We're going from the 27th of December through to 5th of January. So it is longer than 8 days, isn't it? But what I'm going to tell you now is how I travelled and why I love this way of travelling so much. Now, whenever I travel, when I were on my own, when I started travelling on my own, would have been around 2006, I cut the anchor of this ex-girlfriend. I got shut. And I travelled around the world with her before, and I thought I enjoyed it, but it wasn't until I started travelling by myself that I realised that fucking hell, what an anchor this person had been on me. And the first place I travelled by myself, truly by myself, was Burma, Myanmar. In 2006, I jumped on a plane to Thailand and landed in Bangkok. I had a few days. I had to figure out how to get into Rangoon from Burma because there were no overland crossings then in that time. And I got a flight because you could only fly into Burma then. I'm sure it's opened up now. What are we talking? 2006? So it's 17 years ago that I were there. And flying into Burma and then getting my boots on the ground and doing it by myself for the first time was fucking joyous. To have nobody else to think about, to have nobody else to worry about, and just do it by myself were great. Now, what I enjoy about travelling this way is coming from Bradford, when you don't fit in the town where whoever upstairs has dropped you in, you know, you've just got to get out of the place. I didn't fit in my family, didn't fit in the place I lived, certainly didn't fit in school, and the friends that I have. I was always a floater. I'd float from certain friend groups to other ones. I had about 3 friend groups, and I'd float from one to the other, not really fitting 100% in that group. So I was always a floater. So traveling like this, you fly into a place, you stay in one place for 3 or 4 days. If you liked it, you'd stay there for 3 days. You'd sort of meet people, you'd make a few friends, and then I'd move on to the next place. And the thing I liked moving from town to town to town is every time you went into a new town or a new village, it was a clean slate. You were starting what felt like you were starting your life over again. You had to find a bed. You had to find somewhere to eat. You had to find new people to talk to, new friends to make. And if that didn't gel within that first day, you could go, oh, well, fuck this, and move on. And I fucking love that. I love doing that. You know, when something don't work, you move on. When something ain't working in one place, you move on. When something works and you get a bit of traction, you stay there for a few extra days. You meet that local that wants to take you here and find somewhere to show you. So you stay for that extra day, and you can do because you've got no work to go to. You've got nowhere to be. You've got no plan. And that's what I loved about that Burma trip. I had a month in Burma. I were in Rangoon, in Yangon. I were getting followed about by secret police. Why they would want to follow me is beyond me. I had no idea why they'd want to follow me. And I was sat on the steps of this temple, and I were looking over across the road, and there were a couple of these secret police just sat there watching me. And this monk sat down at side of me. And we just had a conversation. And he was saying, what's annoying you? And I just gestured over to these secret policemen. I said, they won't stop following me, and I've no idea why. I just want to enjoy this town, but they just won't stop following me. And I know that they're following me, and I think they know that I know that they're following me, and they're just annoying me. And again, another thing that stuck with me, and it changed my life forever, what he said to me. He says, They're not annoying you. You're annoying yourself. You're annoying yourself. You know, and that has followed me through life now. So when I start to feel that, oh, this fucker, this cunt, it's like, oh, no, it's not him, it's not her, it's me. So I just let that water bounce off me now. And I've become a lot fucking calmer. A lot calmer. Even when the kids are being arseholes, which they're not anymore. It's like, oh no, they're not annoying me, I'm annoying myself. I work with a prick now. And in the past, I worked with this Australian of the highest order. And I was just like, oh, right, yeah. It's me that's annoying myself, not him, not her, not the situation. It's yourself. You annoy yourself, you make yourself happy, you make yourself sad. Nothing externally gives you those feelings. You give yourself those feelings. And if you start doing that now, yeah, my life changed. From 2006, my life changed. And that trip changed me. From then on, I went back to the hotel. I told the hotel manager my situation. And he says, right, I know I've got family from here to Mandalay, where I were going, who will look after you all the way up country. They'll show you these little towns, these little villages. And he said, right, get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. My cousin's going to come and pick you up, and he's going to take you to the next town. The secret police will not know where you've gone, and nobody's going to follow you all the way up the country. And I've still to this day, I've no idea why they were following me. So I get to knock on the door at 3 o'clock in the morning. I were ready. There were a car outside at back entrance at the hotel waiting for me. There were his two cousins who were just ready for this adventure. All I had to do, I dropped them about $20, and they drove me 100 kilometres north. Went up north, and then they dropped me off in this village, and I can't remember what the village were called. But his family found me an hotel. They put me up in this hotel, and they just showed me around the area. And it were great. And then what happened was, there was a town further up north, and I called P-A. P-Y-A-Y. I always remember how it was spelt. And it must have been a town of about 20,000. And I stayed there. It's just some random basic town. But I stayed in that town for 5 days. And that was very rare when I was travelling. And I was just wandering around. And I was the only white person in that entire town. I walked from the north to the south to the east to the west. It was on the banks of the Irrawaddy River. And I was waiting for a boat to come and get me. And I was going to go up real Apocalypse Now time. I was going to go up north to Mandalay by boat. And I was just waiting on this boat to come and pick me up. But it were the dry season. And we were coming into Songkran Festival, which is the water festival. So you're walking around the town and people were just throwing buckets of water on you because that's what they do at the end of March, the start of April. That's what they do. It's the water festival. So you can't be walking around with your phone or your camera because it's going to get ruined because people are just throwing water all over you. So I spent loads of time in that town just wandering around, and people would come and just walk with me just to talk and speak English to you. And it's just such a friendly town. The police had not seen a white face in a while. So they were being friendly. They were being inquisitive. The one asking me questions, what you doing here, what you doing? And all I was doing was spending time there before I went up to Mandalay to celebrate the water festival. There was a bridge that went across the river. There was a a complex of temples that was over the river that I walked over one day. Now, looking about as I'm walking on the river, as I would normally do, before I went over that bridge, a motorbike were coming towards me. He stopped. He said, if you're walking over this bridge to the other side, just keep looking down as you walk. And I was like, what for? Is a scorpion? He said, no, the bridge where you're going to be walking, there's just places where it's a straight drop. The concrete has just fallen away and it's a straight drop. So just watch what you're doing. And true enough, I'm walking across this bridge. There are sheer drops. There are pieces of concrete missing. And these are just the friendly people that are just looking out for you. I got to the other side of the river. There were loads of kids jumping about, screaming and shouting. A woman hearing all these kids, hearing this excitement, she came out. What are you doing here? I'm going to see those temples that are just down there. She took me around these temples. She spent an hour explaining everything to me and then took me back to her house and fed me, showed me around her house. There's kids just jumping about and hiding from you in dining room as she served me these vegetables. These vegetables, I've never tasted anything like it in my life. Just that had been boiled and steeped in soy sauce. And she brought me these bowls of steaming rice out. And then I finished up and she just brought her kids out. And she says, right, I'm going to go washing up now. I'm going to be about 30 or 40 minutes. She says, just speak to my kids in English. So we just had this impromptu English lesson. And she'd given me the best tasting vegetables I'd ever had in my life. And realising how much I'd enjoyed these vegetables, she put together these this veg and these rice balls, and she'd wrapped them up in these banana leaves. And then off I went with these kids just laughing and playing tig with me as I walked over this bridge. But I spent 5 days in that little town that is a nowhere town that I've spoken to many people that have travelled around Burma. They've never been there. And I remember this in the town square on roundabout, there were this gold statue of a military man on this golden horse. And then off I went to meet the people that I'd met in Rangoon at the water festival. I'd arranged to meet them at this certain cafe at this certain time on this certain day. Because your phones weren't working in Burma back in 2006. There were internet, but you weren't guaranteed it. Met up with them. They were all there. Off we went and we spent 3 great days and nights in Mandalay at the water festival. But that travelling, it's like starting a new life in a new town. Just little mini breaks. I mean, you're having a holiday, but you're having mini breaks within the holiday. And I've explained this to my wife for many, many years, and she couldn't understand it until we tried a bit of it in Indonesia in August. And the kids loved it, she loved it. So we're going to do the same thing again. We had 8 days in Bali. And we travelled to 4 different places. And each place was different in its own special way. And the kids loved it. My wife loved it. And what she really loved doing in the past was just staying in one hotel and having a resort break. But we did it. We tasted it my way this time. So we're going to do it again in December. So that's why I enjoy this travelling. For people that don't fit in, for people that like being on their own, like being alone, don't really like meeting people. If you want to have a day where you don't want to talk to any fucker, you can just wander off and have a day to yourself. If you want to spend time with other people, you go and have breakfast. Oh, can I sit with you here? And then you start talking to people. What are you doing today? Do you mind if I tag along with you? I'm a bit of a fucking loser. I hadn't had a conversation with anybody in English for a while. And then you meet people and you go and do stuff like that. So that's the episode today. Different ways of travelling. My way of travelling. Some of you might like the resort hotels. There's nothing wrong with that. Some of you might provide the 3 square meal full board, everything provided for you, entertainment at night. There's nothing wrong with that. Me, I prefer racking up in some Southeast Asian town at dusk with no idea of where I'm going to sleep, no idea of where I'm going to eat. You jump off that bus. You jump onto the road, it's dusty. You throw the backpack over your shoulder and you walk down a dark street. A local comes out of a shop and waves to you and says hello. And you just turn to him and say, is there anywhere I can stay tonight? And your adventure starts. I fucking love that situation. And I'm still doing it at 52 years old. And I'm going to do it for the first time with my wife and kids. I can't wait. I can't wait. Anyway, that's the episode and that's that. I will thank you again. I will thank you again for the downloads. Remember, it's on YouTube, so you can watch this on YouTube. And any travel tips that you have for me, please send them to me. So please keep subscribing. Please keep downloading and listening. It's appreciated. It really is. And I will speak to you all next week. Adios.